Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the DieHardMMA podcast. I'm your host, as always, Clint McLean. Ladies and gentlemen, we are headed to China for UFC Shenzhen this weekend. But before that, I've got a surprise for y'all. That's right, we are going to be joined by Gillian the Savage Robertson, one of my favorite up-and-coming fighters. She is kind enough to come on the Die Hard MMA podcast and let us get to know her just a little bit. So before we get this thing going, I do want to remind everybody that we do have a partnership with betodds.ag. If you want to do a deposit for first-time depositors, you can get a deposit bonus match of 100%, something they don't offer anywhere but here at the Die Hard MMA podcast. Anything deposited between $50 and $500 will get you going, and all you have to do is use the Die Hard MMA podcast code, and that gets you a deposit bonus that no one else will be able to match. I know we do football. I know we do MMA here, but football season is here. We've got college football. Hockey's right around the corner. Baseball, basketball. You can bet pretty much anything over there at betodds.ag. The code is FE6EFB. That lets you know that you're coming for the Die Hard MMA podcast. That lets them know that we sent you, and that'll get you that 100% bonus. So without any further ado, thank you very much for joining us today, Gillian. We really appreciate you coming on the podcast. How are you doing today?
Thank you for having me, and I'm doing great. I believe 7 weeks out now, so I'm getting close. Super excited to perform at UFC Boston.
We are super excited to see you back. As I kind of mentioned to you off air before we jumped on here, this is a betting podcast. We look at everything from kind of a betting perspective, and you are one of our favorites, not just because of how awesome you are, but because we make money betting on you. We've been on you your last 2 fights in a row, and I couldn't believe the line the bookies gave us on the Sarah Froda fight. You coming out and getting it done by TKO was insanely impressive. I really thought we were going to see another submission, and it was really cool to see you finish that thing with ground and pound instead. How'd that feel?
Honestly, I was going for another submission myself. I thought I was going to finish. I thought I was going to be able to get a rear naked choke, but I was just throwing elbows to try to set it up to get her to turn, and then the ref said to her, he's like, "I need more work from you, Froda." So I was just like, "Okay, go now."
That is so awesome. I was screaming at the TV. I was jumping up and down. So we've been following your career basically the whole time. I saw you on The Ultimate Fighter. And you know what? I don't want to be all about MMA while we're getting to know you a little bit, but is The Ultimate Fighter as bad as everyone says? That's like the number one thing. When you hear interviews, everyone's like, "Oh, it was the worst experience of my life. It was so bad." Was it that bad?
Honestly, it was the worst and best experience of my life, both. Like, I loved the girls who were on my team. I loved my coaches. I loved everything about being there. The fact that you're training for 4 hours a day most days, it's like you have so much one-on-one attention with such high-level coaches, and it's just a once-in-a-lifetime experience that you'll never get to experience anywhere else. But that being said, it also starts to feel like a prison. It feels like you're locked up there. Like, you can't leave the house. You have no phone, no TV, no books, no music, no nothing. And it's like, it's almost like you're a little kid again. It's like you got to ask the producers if you want to do anything, and then they always tell you no. So, but like you can also ask for like whatever food you want, ask for anything like that. So it's a dope experience, but it also, like, there's points that are great and there's points that suck in the house.
I got you. No wonder everyone ends up going nuts. I mean, I'm surprised to hear they don't even let you have books. I knew you couldn't have technology or anything like that, but that kind of surprised me. I didn't realize that.
Oh yeah, like they wouldn't even let us have coloring books. We asked for some and they gave us drawing pads, so we ended up making like kindergartners drawings and hanging them up all over the walls because we were just so bored.
That's hilarious. Well, at least you figured something out to do something. So first and foremost, like I said, we followed your career. Kind of what got you started in MMA? How'd you get rolling in the first place?
Honestly, I have no idea. Whenever, like, growing up, I was never the most athletic person. I always started volunteering with animal shelters when I was like 7, and that's what I did my whole life. Was I volunteered with the Humane Society. I volunteered with a wildlife rescue. I volunteered with a horse rescue. And then for some reason, when I was 16, I wanted to try cardio kickboxing, and I just kind of fell into it after that.
Just kind of out of the blue one day, you rolled over and were like, let's go kickboxing today.
Yeah, I really don't know why. I was just 16 years old and I wanted to try cardio kickboxing. And the gym I ended up walking to was Dean Thomas's gym, and he's still my coach to this day. So it was just pure fate.
That is so awesome. Yeah, we're big fans of ATT on the Die Hard MMA podcast. You fell into a really good spot there.
Oh yeah, and
So,
starting off training, I didn't know who Dean was. I didn't know what the UFC was, so it's like I didn't really know what I was getting into. But Dean really took me under his wing and really started working with me when I was an amateur. And I feel like it's like I didn't understand how much one-on-one attention and how much that meant to get that from Dean Thomas, because he's a legend. But now it's like looking back, it's like I feel like I just took it for granted in the early days. I didn't understand who he was.
you got some special treatment and didn't even realize it off the bat.
Oh yeah, 100%.
You know what? Let's break away from the MMA stuff for just a little bit, and I want to get to know you. You mentioned you were doing some volunteer work and stuff like that. What are some of your passions like outside the cage? What do you like to do?
Uh, I don't really have time for a lot of volunteer work anymore. It's like I used to when I was a lot younger. I still have a 12-year-old pit bull who's my best friend. I love him more than anything, but honestly, especially when I'm in camp, I'm just so focused on my fight. Like that is my life. That is all I do.
I got you. I got you. Well, have you officially started the camp yet for your next fight coming up?
Uh, Technically, I'm never out of camp. I feel
Okay.
like I train year round no matter what. I literally for this fight, I fought Sarah Froda on Saturday, and then by Monday, I had the call for the next fight. So I
No
just,
way.
yeah, I've just kind of went from camp to camp, and I haven't really had a break.
That is so crazy. Do you feel like yeah, not to put any thoughts in your head or anything, do you feel like you need a break, or is it just this is your normal deal and you roll with it and you like it?
Oh yeah, no, I'm ready for it. I this is honestly perfect for me. I would love to fight every 2 months, every 3 months. Like keep me active, keep me in there, and like that's what keeps me happy as a fighter.
That's so awesome. I love that. And obviously the fans like when fighters are active. It gets real rough when you see people at the top that fight like once a year, once every other year. It's hard to be a fan sometimes because you just want to see them come back so much. Where I was actually surprised when I was getting ready to jump on and do the call with you. I always pull up the fighter profiles and stuff like that. So I've got a couple things to look at while we're doing the calls. And I didn't even realize that your next fight had been scheduled yet. I was going to ask you if that was something that you could break for us. So I was super excited to see that you're already coming up because that's a pretty quick turnaround. And Maycee Barber, that's a hell of a matchup.
Oh yeah, I'm super excited for this matchup. Obviously, she's ranked girl number 12, my biggest matchup to this date, and I feel like it's a very winnable fight for me. And I also feel like she's kind of overlooking me. She's kind of talking to Paige VanZant more than anything else right now, and I feel like um, my style in general doesn't necessarily look intimidating, even though I have a lot of finishes. I feel like a lot of girls aren't necessarily scared of my style. They feel like it's something that they can escape, but then they just fall into traps and get caught.
And it's so awesome. I can't. That's one of those things I personally don't understand. When the Sarah Froda line was all matched up. Now, just to give you, so first off, before I get into that, do you do any betting? Have you done any betting of any kind, gambling, anything like that? Do you know how it works or how it goes?
No, not at all. I've never bet on anything in my life. I've never gambled in my life, but
Okay.
a few of my friends have told me they've made money off me.
That is awesome. So, newbie, all right. Well, so whenever there's a fight coming up, the experts they kind of break it down, they take a look at it, and they set a betting line. And obviously, somebody's a favorite, somebody's the underdog. And then after they open up that line, anybody in the world can bet on it. And that'll push the line up or down. So someone can open up as a favorite and enough money can come in on them to make them the underdog, crazy stuff like that. And when they set you up with Froda, I think that not only the other fighters underestimate you, but I think the world underestimates you. You guys were, I want to say you were a slight underdog, and then it closed right about even money. And I was like, what are they doing? Like, you should have been the favorite far and away in that fight, in my opinion. And obviously, you showed what you could do the way that you finished it. And if Maycee is looking past you, oh boy, I can't imagine. That's not a good idea.
Oh, definitely not. I feel like a lot, like I said, I feel like a lot of people look past me. They don't feel like my style is intimidating, and I don't. I feel like it may be just because I'm a grappler, but I have 6 finishes out of my 7 wins. So it's like obviously I'm going in there to finish. I'm never coming out with a lot of damage, so I feel like it's working pretty well.
Yeah, it's working fantastic. It's like a lot of people see grapplers as almost boring. They want to see a stand-up fight. They want to see somebody get knocked out, that kind of thing. But the way that you grapple and then just you minimize the damage that you take and manage to maximize your output is really impressive. Like you're not grinding out a 15-minute decision win or something like that. You're getting those girls out of there, and it's really cool to watch. Is there anything in particular? Now, I don't give away the game plan or anything, but is there anything specifically you're trying to work on to, improvement, anything like that headed into the Barber fight?
Oh, there's always things to get better on, no matter what. I feel like Dean has created a system that's unique and really ahead of the MMA game in general. And I feel like I'm kind of the guinea pig with it, where it's just things we're playing with, and a lot of people don't know how to defend it because, like I said, it's unique. I feel like we're ahead of the game, and people just haven't seen it yet, so they really don't know how to react to it.
Awesome. That's fair point. I like it. So I want to ask you real quick about the Savage. You have my favorite nickname in all of MMA. I think it suits you perfectly. How'd you come up with the Savage, or who gave you the nickname the Savage?
So after my first amateur fight when I was 18 years old, Dean wrote an email about me and sent it out to our whole team, like our whole fight squad. And he was like, she's as quiet as a mouse, but when she walks into the cage, she turns into a pure savage. And then after that, a few of my friends were like, oh, you hear that? A savage. And then it just caught on after that.
That's awesome. I love it. So does it kind of feel that way to you? Do you just kind of flip that switch and you're a different person when you get in there, or are you just, kind of a quiet person in general?
I feel like I'm just kind of a quiet person in general. When I'm in the cage, I don't need to necessarily get angry. I just feel like I need to get focused. I need to be focused on my breathing, just make sure I'm in the moment. And it's weird to me because, like, looking back on some of my fights, like I've had some arm bars that I watch. I'm like, oh, that's so gross to watch. But in the moment, I don't have a problem doing it. But just watching it, I can't even deal with it.
Oh, geez. I kind of understand how that goes. I've now obviously nowhere near anywhere bragging level. I've done some Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu myself, and it's fun to choke people. When you lock that choke in, you're not thinking about how comfortable they are or anything. You're just going to town on it, and it's not until afterward that you kind of are like, oh, my bad.
Exactly. Really, when I fought Sarah Froda, I cut her that first time, and I didn't even feel like I hit her. Like I hit her with an elbow, and I felt like it was so gentle, and I didn't even touch her. And when I looked and I saw blood, I was like, "Oh shit! Wow! Like it actually cut her."
Is there anybody out there that you like look up to or like model yourself after, UFC fighter wise? Like, is there anybody that's I don't know. I don't want to say your dream fight, but you know what I mean? Like, is there somebody at the top of the ladder you've always been interested in or anything like that?
I feel like no one specifically, but there's definitely a lot of people that I draw inspiration from. I feel like greatest in the world are John Jones and Amanda Nunes. I feel like they're the top for me. Like technically, you can't beat either one of them, but I get to work with girls like Joanna too, where it's just you see a different drive. You see that world champion push, and I strive to be something like that.
That's awesome. And I got to tell you, you couldn't have the fact that you get to train with somebody like Joanna is super awesome. She's a complete beast. That lady is a machine. And she's coming back soon, right? Doesn't she have a fight lined up finally?
Oh yeah, she's fighting Michelle Watterson in Tampa, in Florida.
That's it.
It's literally the week before my fight, so she should be back soon.
That's a great fight too. I'm looking forward to that one. Honestly, that's a tough one to pick. I'm a fan of both ladies, so that's going to be a tough one for me.
Oh yeah, I'm upset I'm not on that card. I'm like, it's the week before my fight. You couldn't have put me on the Tampa card, but no matter what.
That'd be cool for you guys to go in together that way, peak at the same time, both fight on the same night. It's
no
always
matter.
cool when teammates get to do that.
Yeah, definitely. But Boston's still my closest fight that I've ever had so far. So I'm just happy for a short plane ride this time.
So you said it's your shortest fight. What's your fight location? What was your longest one? Did you have to take like a road trip or a bad flight to get anywhere?
When I fought in Las Vegas for my first UFC fight, then my second one was Liverpool, which I missed one of my flights for that, so it ended up being a day longer, that flight. And then I fought Sao Paulo after that, Prague after that, and Edmonton after that, and then
Wow.
now Boston. So Boston was the closest I've ever fought with the UFC.
Holy cow, they are moving you around.
Everywhere.
That's insane. So outside of the cage, I know we kind of touched on the fact that you don't have, you're kind of in camp 24/7. Do you do anything to decompress? I mean, do you like movies? Do you read any books? Do you play video games? Anything like that? Yeah. Well, there you go. That's a good answer. What kind of food do you like? Is there any like a particular restaurant that you go to, or do you make everything at home? I know obviously you gotta be concerned with your intake and clean eating and all that kind of stuff, being a professional fighter, so it makes it hard probably to go out to places sometimes.
Especially if you're in game, it makes it hard to go to any places. You have to be so specific about things, down to like the salts that are on it, and you don't know exactly what you're getting from a restaurant. So it's like literally when I'm in camp, I just eat at home, or I have a meal prep plan that they take care of me. So I'll work with them, and I also work with a nutritionist during camp. But I honestly, when I'm out of camp, carbs in general. I don't get those in camp, so it's like I'm going for burgers, pizza, tacos, anything that has lots and lots of carbs. Yeah, I'm down for it.
There you go. We're a big fan of Taco Tuesday over here. So I'm from Arizona, so it's all about the carbs and the tacos. Yeah, do you follow any other sports? I mean, are you a fan of anything outside the world of MMA or?
Not really. I feel it's been like I said this last time, I went from camp to camp, so I've literally just like lived in the zone for the
Wow.
last 2 months, 3 months, and it's just gonna continue. So I feel like I just live in a hole when I'm in camp. I don't focus on anything else. Like I spend I do like 3 or 4 training sessions a day usually, and then the rest of it I'll spend a lot of time doing mental work. So it's like I'll visualize, I'll meditate, I'll read a lot. I watch my opponent fight every single day. I a lot of different things. I just bought John Danaher's new DVD, so I've been watching that too. So learning new things. So it's like a lot of my free time is just spent with the sport.
That is so awesome. Okay, so I keep trying to steer this thing away from the sport, but it's obvious it's just going to come right back to it. So I'm going to stop trying. Um, so you do 3 training sessions a day? Holy cow.
Usually all my time is spent either at the gym or at the dog park, and that's about it.
Do you mind if I ask, are you a certain belt level in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu at this point?
Yes, I'm a brown belt at this point, but
Brown belt.
I just don't put a lot of time in the gi anymore. So it's like I feel like I can compete with like Zafrona. I competed with her. She's like a black belt, but like I feel like I compete with a lot of black belts, but I just don't put my gi on anymore. So I haven't gotten that privilege yet.
Gotcha. Okay. And you know what? I'm glad you told me that. It's good for us to know, obviously. But that's something that everybody when I picked. So first off, I know I've said we've bet on you the last couple times. When I picked you against Froda, everyone was like, "Man, but Froda's a black belt." Like, I don't think people knew you were a brown belt at that point. So everyone was like, "I don't know what she is, but she's not a black belt." And Froda's a high level black belt, and I'm like, that doesn't always matter in MMA. I mean, I'm a jiu-jitsu guy myself, and there are levels to this shit. There's levels, even in Brazilian jiu-jitsu, black belt versus black belt. Some people are just they're better than others. You know what I mean? I had a guy that I went to school with who was only a brown belt under my coach, and he competed in the black belt division, and he was winning by finish every single time. So that was something that with you, it's like you've got MMA grappling, and that puts you on black belt level. You know what I mean? So just because somebody's a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, to me, doesn't mean you're at any kind of a disadvantage.
I don't feel like the belt doesn't intimidate me at all. If someone has a black belt, then like you said, it can be different. Different schools promote differently. So there's some girls that I've went with that are black. Like I compete jiu-jitsu several times a month. Probably like I try to be active as possible. So I compete against black belts. I've beaten black belts. You know, it's like I have a brown belt, but I'm obviously at that level. I'm also capable, but I've also been beaten by a lot of black belts. Like I know we have Shazari Matuda at our gym. She's like I want to say like a 5-time world champion. She's an absolute monster, and she's smaller than me.
So okay, what for the people at home who are fans but haven't done any grappling, what does it feel like to get your ass kicked by a smaller fighter? Because I know what that feels like. We've got a purple belt in the gym that I train at, and she weighs probably 85 pounds and chokes me out every single time. So what does it feel like for you when you've got like a smaller, more advanced fighter like that on you?
With her, she's so fast. She just gets around you, and I don't even know how she gets to the places so fast. But I feel like when I was like, I started training when I was 16, and I was 115 pounds, you know, just walking. And so I feel like I was always that person growing up. That I was always the little person who was able to manhandle all the big guys. And like you have like a 160-pound guy come in, and you just do whatever you want to him, and he looks at you like, how is this possible? It's just funny.
That's hilarious. I've got the exact opposite story. So I'm about 220 pounds and I'm out of shape. So I should be probably about 190. But when I do jujitsu, when I came in first, it was the same thing. I was right out of high school, thought I was hot stuff coming off the football team, had never grappled before. And they throw me in with these, 115 pounders, 120-pound kids that have been training for a couple months. And I was like, what just happened?
Yeah, it's definitely crazy. That's why I fell in love with jujitsu though. It's just the little techniques and the little things, like literally the way you grab someone's hand, or like if your thumb's on the outside or your thumb's on the inside, it can make all the difference on like if the technique works or not. Just the littlest things, the littlest techniques. And I find that so fascinating that it allows someone my size to be able to do what I want to someone who it doesn't matter how big you are.
Absolutely. It's freaking cool. Jiu-jitsu absolutely revolutionized the sport of MMA. And I mean, we all know that, going back to the Gracies and stuff like that, everybody's heard that story. Do you have a favorite submission?
Probably, I'd say rear naked choke now. When I was an amateur, it was definitely an armbar. But girls stop tapping the armbar, so it makes it difficult to want to go for them. So rear naked chokes, no matter what, you don't have the option. If you don't want to tap, then you're going to go to sleep.
That's true. You know what? That's a good point. I didn't think about it that way, but you are right. Like, what is up with that lately? People are so flexible and they just bend out of arm bars. It's like your arm should snap there, but for some reason it didn't. I don't get that. That's been kind of a trend lately.
When I fought, it was my last fight before I got in the UFC. I fought Hannah Cipher, who's now in the UFC. She's a 15er. And I had her in an armbar for I think 3 minutes, and I was just sitting there like cranking on it as hard as I could, and I couldn't get it. And then I ended up finishing with a rear naked choke in the second round. And after the fight, I saw her walking around the venue, and she had her arm in a sling. And I was like, "What even? Like, honestly, it was hurting her. Like, why did you tap?" So that was the last fight that I was like really trying an armbar from top, especially from bottom. I'll go for if I'm on my back, then I feel like it's no matter what, if I don't get the submission, I'm gonna get a sweep off of it. So I'm gonna end up on top. I'm gonna end up in mount. So it's like if I'm on my back, I'll still attempt arm bars, but from on top, I don't go for them anymore because of that fight.
I don't blame you. And like you said, once you shut the lights off with a rear naked choke, that's it. It's over. It doesn't matter. There's no toughing out of that.
Oh yeah, you don't have an option then, no matter what. So rear naked choke is my go-to, and that's where I have the most setups too. That's where I have the most ways to get into it. And like I said, Dean and I are revolutionizing the game with the shit he's coming up with, and I feel like that we've revolved it around my rear naked choke game.
That is so awesome. I love hearing stuff like that. I'm a complete fight nerd. So I love researching that kind of stuff, and I love hearing that kind of thing. And it's funny. I've been long time have I been a defender of the ground game in mixed martial arts. When people boo as soon as it hits the ground and stuff like that, drives me nuts. And maybe it's just because I've done jujitsu myself, but I love watching the way stuff like that plays out, the setups. It's fascinating to me. It's poetry on the ground for me.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And especially, like you said earlier, I feel like I don't have a boring grappling style necessarily. I feel like I'm making things happen. I'm always attacking. I'm always looking for the submission. I'm always trying to get out of the fight as soon as possible. So I'm just trying to get my finish. And I feel like a lot of times grapplers get the bad stereotype because a lot of wrestlers, they just kind of sit on top and don't really do anything, just wait to get stood up. But I feel like I'm hoping mine's more interesting than
that. Well, don't worry. You haven't put anybody to sleep. You're far more interesting than that. I don't think anybody's bored with your fights, especially when they hit the ground. So I'm going to put you on the spot here real quick, if you don't mind. Do you have any fun stories or anything like that? Any crazy interactions with fans or MMA fighters that you'd be willing to tell or share, anything like that?
That just kind of put me on the spot. I'm not sure.
Sorry.
I have no idea where to start with that. It's I don't know.
No big deal. Just gotta fire stuff out there like that every once in a while. So you're actually only the second fighter interview that I've done on the podcast. And my first interview was Juan Adams. And holy crap, that guy had a story for everything. So I apologize for coming at you hot like that, but I said one or two things to Juan and he just ran with it. Every single time I said anything, he had a story to roll into. So I might have an unrealistic expectation for people having stories locked and loaded.
Yeah, I'm definitely what I would consider more of a socially awkward person. I always people always ask me how I took my first amateur fight, and I feel like I always used to say I was just too socially awkward to say no. People were like, "Yeah, you want to do it?" And I was like, "Okay, sure."
Oh, that's great. So when you're we talked about your ground game. Let's talk about your striking a little bit. Do you feel like you have a specific style? I mean, for the most part, people tend to compartmentalize, striking when it comes to mixed martial arts. It's they mostly do Muay Thai, they mostly do boxing. Obviously, we're mixing everything, but is there anything you feel like you excel at or enjoy a little bit more than the other?
I feel like we usually focus on boxing more than anything, but generally my striking is to set up my wrestling. So that's our biggest focus, is getting into my shots off of my striking, which I feel like a lot of people have problems with it. Even at the highest level in the sport, you can have a really good wrestler, but they don't know how to necessarily use their strikes to set up their shots to close the distance and get in. So they end up taking shitty shots because they didn't use their strikes well enough. So that's definitely something I work on a lot, is just to be able to close the distance, get in on my shots, and just use my footwork until I can can pick that moment.
Awesome. All right. So do you have a favorite, I don't know, favorite fight or a favorite finish out of the ones that, your professional career? Is there one that stands out to you that meant the most or was the, most exciting for you?
Out of my fights?
Yeah, out of your fights.
Honestly, this is kind of weird. There's literally only two fights that I'm even proud to watch. I've had 23 fights, I think, now, but my last one against Sarah Froda and then my one against Molly McCann are the only two fights where I really felt like I performed in those fights, where I did well.
Really?
But yeah, other than that, I don't like watching my fights. I don't feel like when I fought Veronica Macedo, I made so many mistakes in that fight, and I was I was not proud of that fight at all. I don't watch that fight a lot at all. But my Molly McCann one and my Sarah Froda one, I feel like I made a lot of smart decisions, and there was a few technical errors, obviously, I made that no matter what, you're not going to have a perfect fight. So me and my coach went back and we watched them, but I didn't make any major mistakes that she was able to capitalize on. Where when I fought Veronica Macedo, I made several mistakes that she was able to capitalize on, and I got swept, I think, 2 or 3 times in that fight, and that just doesn't happen to me. So that I was just not proud of that.
So is it safe to say that you're a perfectionist?
Yeah, I think so. like I said, with my Sarah Rhoda one, there's like my head positioning on my single legs were really low, so it's like I definitely need to work on that. I definitely have things I need to work on, but uh, those two fights, I performed my best.
All right, fair enough. Now, you're relatively young, not relatively, you're young, especially when it comes to MMA. Maycee's younger than you are. I mean, do you feel like you usually have the experience edge in these kinds of spots? How's that going to feel to be the one who's a little bit more, I guess, experienced and seasoned than your opponent?
Be more seasoned. But I guess I feel like that in a lot of fights because I have so much amateur experience too. I feel like like I said, I've had like 23 fights. I've been in the cage 23 times. I know what it's like. I don't think she's had a lot of amateur fights. I think she had a couple. I know she's 7-0 as a pro, but she hasn't really been tested.
I absolutely agree, and it's awesome that you mentioned your amateur career. A lot of people don't have that kind of an amateur experience. I feel like most fighters get maybe 2 or 3 wins, and then they're like, "All right, let's go pro. I'm ready." Why do you feel like you had such a long amateur career before you turned pro?
Uh, I guess I didn't know what I was getting myself into in the first place. Like, uh, I was 16 when I started, 18 when I had my first fight, just because that's the legal age to fight in Florida. And then I guess I just kept on falling into it more and more. Like, I didn't really know what I was getting into my first fight, and then I fell in love with it after that. And Dean was just working with me a lot, and eventually he told me that I was like he thought I was ready. So when he said so, I was like, all right, let's do it. Let's get paid.
There you go. All right. I honestly, I think you made kind of the right choice. You know what I mean? You came into your pro career way more experienced than most people do, comfortable with the cage, comfortable with combat. Like, I kind of got to tip my hat there to Dean, obviously for way more reasons than just that. But I feel like that was a good call for your progression there. So with this Maycee fight, again, I don't give anything away, but like you said, you like the matchup, you like the fight. Is there anything in particular that you like about the spot?
I feel like she talks a lot, and she's a big hype train in the division. So that's what I really like about it, is that I feel like it's gonna get me a lot of attention that I deserve. I feel like I've been finishing fights, and I've been well, like I said, 5 UFC fights, 4 finishes, and she's getting a lot of attention that uh, I definitely feel like I said, I deserve it. I've put in the work and I put in the time, so I feel like no matter what, my style's dangerous. I'm gonna be able to take any girl down, get to the throat like I want.
All right. I like it. I absolutely love the confidence. So I think you're ranked number 15 right now. Is that right?
Correct. Yes.
Okay. Awesome. So I assume we're going top 10 after you choke out Maycee Barber, right?
Oh, hopefully. I heard Paige VanZant talking on Ariel Helwani's podcast. She's saying that she would fight me, so I wouldn't argue that fight either. So I
Did
know
she say she would fight you? I didn't hear that one.
yeah, she was talking. They were talking about Maycee Barber, how Maycee was apparently sliding into her husband's DMs or whatever.
I saw that. I'm sorry. That was hilarious.
But they were talking about that, and then Paige was saying how she doesn't feel like the disrespect should be awarded in the sport. How Macy's being very disrespectful, and she doesn't want to award her with that fight, knowing obviously Paige is a money fight. Paige just has a lot of attention around her,
Yeah.
and Ariel was saying, "Oh, she has a big fight coming up October 18th with Gillian Robertson," and Paige was like, "I'll fight Gillian Robertson." So uh, I definitely heard that. I'm definitely looking for like she was ranked before. She's just been out with her arm, so that's the only reason Paige
Mhm.
isn't ranked right now. So she's definitely a tough opponent, and I'd definitely be down for that fight. If not, we're looking top 10.
Awesome. Awesome. And I think that's really smart of you to pick up on something like that because you're right. I mean, I don't want to quite make this comparison, I guess, but Paige almost seems like the Conor McGregor of the women's division, where she's not the title holder or anything like that, but she moves the needle. You know what I mean? When she did the Dancing with the Stars thing, my parents, I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to tell you this. My parents have asked me to get Paige VanZant on my stupid podcast because they're such fans of her after watching her on Dancing with the Stars. They don't care about betting. They're like, you should get Paige VanZant on your podcast. I'm like, yeah, Mom, Dad, it's that easy. I'll send her a text real quick. But I think that would be awesome for you. And if she already threw your name out there, even if it was mostly around the whole Maycee Barber thing, that's a storyline thread. And I feel like fights are all about storylines. If you've got some kind of history, if you've got some little thing to latch onto, that'd be a pretty sweet call out after the fight with Barber. I know you're kind of quiet. You say you're socially awkward. Are you gonna start like calling people out and trying to make some waves like that, or are you just gonna kind of do the take it as it comes approach?
Honestly, before this last fight, me and Dean were looking at the rankings, and we were like, all right, do we want to call someone out? Like, are we going to prepare something? He was like, the UFC just wants to hear something on that post-fight interview, so you got to think of something. So we were looking at the rankings, and I was throwing out Macy's name, honestly. It was like right before I fought Sarah, I was like, Macy's talking shit about how Montana De La Rosa and Mackenzie Dern and Paige VanZant won't fight her, but Montana said she would fight her. Mackenzie Dern was pregnant, and then Paige had a broken arm. So I'm like, those girls are irrelevant, and I'm like, I feel like she would be a big matchup. I feel like she's a very winnable fight. And Dean was like, all right, let's just wait on that. And then 2 days later, he confirmed the fight for me.
That's awesome. You didn't even have to do the call out part. It just kind of happened.
Oh yeah, it just kind of fell into place.
That's really funny. And talk about bad timing. I always think it's funny when people start calling out other fighters like that. And I mean, like somebody just called out Anthony Pettis. It's like the dude broke his foot in his fight. Like, what are you doing? He's going to be on the sidelines for a little while. And here you're trying to stir the pot with Pettis. I've never really understood that. I think you're smart to kind of look at that kind of an angle for it.
Oh yeah, I don't like I said, I don't know why she picked those three girls. And I was in the house with Montana De La Rosa. I know that Montana's not going to be one to back out of a fight. She's like you saw her fight KGB Lee, who is an absolute monster too.
KGB's a monster.
I feel like KGB is a tougher matchup than Maycee Barber. So there's no reason that Montana would say yes to KGB and no to Maycee Barber. Or like she fought Nico Montano in the house, took a 4-inch cut on her forehead and kept on fighting. I'm like, Montana's a G. There's no way that she denied that fight. I've called out Montana before on I believe it was on some interview I did. I called out Montana when it was a couple months ago, and then she retweeted it and she was like, yeah, let's run it. Like, she was down to fight. With the UFC just didn't want to set it up. But
she seems like the bring them all on type of fighter for sure.
Yeah, no, I got a lot of respect for her, and I have no doubt that she wasn't denying a fight, that she would accept that fight 100%, because she's like I said, she's down for it.
She seems to be down for just about anybody. Do you have a hit list? I know we were kind of talking about you wanted Maycee Barber. That's working out. Hopefully the next one after that would be PVZ. But I mean, is there anybody else that you really want to fight in your division?
Honestly, Montana was one that I really wanted to fight. After that loss, it's like I don't really want to fight another girl coming. I don't want to fight a girl coming off a loss right now with my win record. But I feel like she's definitely an up and comer. She's a tough one. She's gonna be up in the if it doesn't happen now, it's going to happen in a couple of years. I feel like she's definitely one of the dark horses in the division too. She's coming up, and she's definitely going to be trouble in a couple of years.
Absolutely. And you know what? I absolutely love the division right now. There's so much up and coming talent. You're all on a collision course with each other at some point. I love the explosion of this division right now. There's so many fun matchups that we can make, and I'm really excited for the next year or two. Kind of like you said, the next 2-3 years, everyone's going to be evolving. You're all going to be knocking on the door of that top 10, and eventually it's going to be top 5 matchups that you're all duking it out with each other for.
Oh yeah, it's definitely an exciting division right now, and just brand new. So I feel like it's just getting started. This is just the beginning, and it's nice to have an active champ too. Valentina fighting twice this year already, so she keeps it moving. She's keeping the division going.
Absolutely. Now, I'm glad you touched on Valentina. What do you think it's going to take to beat her? Because she seems to have, well, basically everything. In my mind, she's kind of a rightful champion. You know what I mean? She's got very well-rounded game. She's got knockout power. She can submit people. And a lot of people don't see her going away for a long time. Have you thought at all about what it would take to stop someone like her?
I obviously she is very talented. Like anybody who can take Amanda Nunes to a close decision has my respect. Like she's obviously very talented. But also, I feel like I said, my skill set is unique. It's something that a lot of people don't know how to handle because they've never seen it before. So I feel like I have potential to finish any girl in this division with the game that I've created, and she's definitely one of them. I feel like I would be. Obviously, she has a lot of tools, and I don't feel like I'm necessarily ready for that matchup yet. But in a year or two, there's not a doubt in my mind that I'd be able to take her out.
Awesome. That just gave me chills. I'm excited. That is fantastic. And to be honest, I completely agree with you. You mentioned, kind of a dark horse position earlier. I honestly believe that you're the dark horse of the division. I can see you rolling through people and the way that you've been improving over the last, little bit. Like you said, you give yourself a year or two and people won't be underestimating you at that point. I think you're on a rocket ship for the top 5.
Oh yeah, definitely let my skills talk for themselves. Just keep on finishing girls, work my way up there, and like I said, I'd like to fight every 2 months, 3 months if I could. So I'm down to work my way up there. I'd take it all.
That would be awesome. And me and my backers would love to bet on you every 2, 3 months because you have been a money train so far for us. And I am looking forward to your next fight with Maycee Barber. Honestly, she is an absolute hype train. So I am hoping that you are the underdog in that fight, not because I think you should be the underdog, but because that means we just get to get a nicer price to pick you at when we bet on you.
I definitely think I will be. Like, I want to say we're fighting in Boston because of her. Like she wanted to be on that card. So, like I said, the Tampa card's the week before, but we couldn't be on that. So
Mm.
we're fighting up in Boston for her, and it just means that I got to disappoint her crowd.
That's so. Oh man, how good is it gonna feel, or just to play the spoiler? Like I know you want to fight closer to home, obviously, less travel, stuff like that. But do you like playing spoiler? Is it fun to go in people's backyards and then just rough them up?
Uh, I guess I'm just used to it. My last fight in Edmonton was the first, like, obviously I'm Canadian, so that's home soil for me. First fight I've ever had in my professional career that was on, like, that I had fans there for me. Everybody was cheering for me. My last, like, I fought Molly McCann in Liverpool. She was the hometown hero. I fought another girl from Sao Paulo in Sao Paulo. Like, I fought a girl from Las Vegas in Las Vegas. Everything is always in their hometown. So I guess it's been a part of my career and I'm used to that now.
That's so awesome. So I want to ask you real quick. This weekend we've got UFC China. Do you think on the main event, who do you think is gonna walk away with the belt at the main event here on Saturday?
That's actually a really tough one to call, honestly. I feel like Weili Zhang is she's a monster. Uh, she's really good and she just she went through Jessica Aguilar and Tisha Torres, where she had phenomenal fights. But I feel like Andrade will definitely will be the one to come out on top. She's just good everywhere. She's got the wrestling, she's got power, and she's got good jujitsu. But Weili Zhang is definitely going to be definitely a tough contender for her.
I agree. It's a tough one to call, and I do think that Andrade is going to end up keeping her belt just because she's so young. Believe it or not, like she's been around. It seems like forever, but I think she's 27, so she's surprisingly young for how long she's been in the game. I don't know. That's going to be a tough fight. Well, Gillian, I don't want to burn up the entire rest of your night. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Me and my listeners really appreciate it. Is there anything that you want to say, or I want to give you a minute if you've got like sponsors you want to shout out or anything that you want to just throw out there? Go right ahead.
Just go ahead and follow Creating Better Days CBD, Fresh Fit Meal Plans, FTWR brand, where you can go ahead and get your Savage shirts. Follow me at savage_UFC on Twitter and Instagram, and watch me fight on October 18th against Maycee Barber, and watch me get my hand raised.
Awesome. We will be there. Now, I sign all of my podcasts off with a let's roll. Would you mind giving one of those, giving us a let's roll to sign this thing out?
Let's roll.
There we go. I love it. Gillian, you are awesome. You're one of my favorite fighters. I legitimately can't wait to see what comes next for you. You heard her, diehards. Thank you very much to Gillian Roberston for coming on the podcast. Everybody get out there, throw her a follow on Twitter, throw her a follow on Instagram. She is just a cool person, and we are looking forward to watching her grow as a mixed martial artist and making money betting on her as a fighter. Everybody, good luck this weekend. We are going to crush UFC Shenzhen. I've got a good feeling about it. Hit me up on Twitter. Let me know if you like the Fighter podcast. Let's like, share, subscribe, retweet. Get this thing out there. Let people know that we're doing cool stuff like fighter interviews like this. And one more time, just a huge thank you to Gillian for coming on the show. Thank you, diehards, for the love. Let's roll.